What if the battle that we're watching right now is not really left versus right? What if the politics is only the surface and underneath it is something much deeper? Well, in these clips that I put together, you're going to hear the quiet part said out loud. You're going to hear why faith in God is a threat to people who want control. And we're going to talk about fear and power and truth and why so many people stay silent even when they know something is wrong. So, for example, we're going to start with a clip from the Sean Ryan podcast where he sits down with military officer, former Congresswoman, and Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who herself once was a Democrat. So again, this is not going to be about left versus right. What she says and what these clips that I'm going to share with you reveal point to something so much deeper, the human desire for power, and behind that, the spiritual kingdom of darkness that has always tried to hide in the dark and replace God's truth with lies. So stick with me, my friends. Hit that like button. Let's get this out to as many people as possible because you're going to hear this all in one short video that I guarantee you will give you and everyone a better understanding of what's really going on. And pay attention to this first clip because if you understand what she says here, you're going to understand right away why the battle over truth is getting so intense. Let me know what you think in the comments as we go along. Here we go.
You're talking about taking God out of everything.
Yeah.
Where are these agendas stemming from?
At its core, it comes from people who ultimately want to be God. They want to be the ultimate master. They want to be the ultimate creator. They want to be the controller of all that they, survey.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at, for example, people who have faith in God, well,
this is good.
If you have faith in God, that means you are not going to be open to having faith in them or their power or the government. And so therefore they view this as a competition, that they have to compete for our faith and our allegiance and our loyalty. And that if we believe in an authority and higher power that is more powerful than the government, then that takes away what they view as their oxygen.
Man, that line right there, their oxygen. What she is saying is that when people put their ultimate faith in God, they cannot be fully controlled by man. And that has always been a threat to every system that wants ultimate authority. And this is why it cannot be simply just Republicans and Democrats. I mean, it's about the state. It's about government control in general. It's about people that want power. She says, I don't understand that mindset. I don't have that mindset. I don't have this mindset of, hey, I want to control everything and be in power and be a top and have servants underneath me. But it's a real mindset that's been going on for thousands of years. There's people that are just thirsty and lustful for more and more power and control. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard served as a Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, ran for president in the Democratic Party, and, she left the party. So again, this is not some lifelong Republican attacking Democrats. This is someone describing what she saw while she was inside the system. But the bigger issue is not the party. The bigger issue is the power, like I said. It goes all the way back to Genesis 3, where the serpent did not just tempt Eve with the fruit. He tempted humanity with the desire to be like God. I mean, think about it. The ability to be like God, to define good and evil, not just to know it, but define it, to wake up, become like God. That was the thing. You know that he knows that you will be like God. That's the root of rebellion. I mean, Satan himself wanted to ascend the Mount of Assembly. He wanted to ascend the stars of God. He wanted to be the top. He wanted to be like God. So man wants to remove God from the throne and put himself there, naturally, because of what's behind it. So when human beings reject God's authority, they do not become free. They simply find another master. Sometimes it's the government. Sometimes it's culture or media. It's some new expert class or a new algorithm. But when an earthly system starts saying, we decide what's true, We decide what you can hear. We decide what you're allowed to question. That is not politics anymore. That is a spiritual issue. And that's why I want to share with you this John Kerry clip. Listen to what he says here about about disinformation and the First Amendment.
And people go and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this.
I just want to stop that even right there. It's hard to build consensus. It means it's hard to shape public thought. It's hard to make them believe the narrative that we want them to believe. He's saying it's harder because of the internet, but he's got a solution.
And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has a...
How do we define what source is sick? Does he define that? Does the this is a World Economic Forum video, by the way. Did they get to decide what news is sick and what's true? You know what I'm saying? And he keeps going. Like I said, he's going to attack the First Amendment here, in my opinion. I'm just saying it's my opinion. It sounds like it. I mean, he's already setting himself up for it. This in 2024. Who decides what's sick? Who decides what news they should listen to?
Agenda, and they're putting out disinformation. Our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change.
Yeah, hopefully we can win enough votes so that we can hammer down on these news sources or these facts that you're going to hear about in a second, how this really happened in real time. And people are getting sued for it. But we can go ahead and just tell you what to believe. We are the bearers of truth now. Don't trust your conscience. Don't trust your experience. Don't trust what you've been grown up to believe, the traditions of your family, whatever it is. Don't trust yourself. You got to trust this other source that we're going to probably institute whenever we win power. That's how I interpret it. I mean, you can debate what he meant, but I think his words are stunning. In the First Amendment First Amendment is a block to being able to hammer disinformation out of existence. That's concerning. The First Amendment, my friends, is not supposed to be viewed as an obstacle. I mean, let's be real. It's supposed to be a shield that protects citizens from governments like maybe ones he's talking about, from controlling over speech, for controlling our speech, controlling, what free speech is and what we should hear and what we can believe and what we can say. Once powerful people begin to see free speech as a problem, we should all be asking, who's it a problem for? And problem to what? Disinformation is real. I get it. Lies are real. Propaganda is real. But the danger is when the people in power claim they alone can define truth for everyone else. Kerry's comments were widely reported in 2024, and they sparked a backlash because many heard him describing constitutional free speech protections as an obstacle to controlling information. People know that once that mindset takes place, man, I'm telling you, the next step is predictable. People stop asking, is this true? And they start asking, what will happen to me if I say it? Because when power controls the narrative, fear controls the people. I mean, I remember this during COVID. And we're going to get into that here in a minute. All right. When it's just the way it is, you feel fearful. I mean, you'll get canceled. You'll get deplatformed. You'll get demonetized. You'll lose your job, things like that. And that's exactly what Tulsi's going to get into next.
Wow. How many of these people are there?
I can't give you a number, but when you look at people who are telling us that what we know to be objectively true in the biological difference between a man and a woman and a boy and a girl, and they tell us you're wrong, just believe what we are telling you.
Can we just pause it there? Maybe I'll just rewind that. I don't need a comment. Let me just rewind that.
People who are telling us that what we know to be objectively true in the biological difference between a man and a woman and a boy and a girl, and they tell us you're wrong,
Mm.
just believe what we are telling you, that a biological male can become pregnant.
What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Look, this is truth be told. This is the name of the channel. I'm not trying to upset people, but there's a time when we got to take a stand. We can't be afraid. And as we're saying, there's people out there that want to stop us from speaking the truth because they have the truth. What she's saying could be labeled as misinformation, hate speech, and it's literally truth. So truth become lies and lies become truth. Evil, good, good, evil. What do you think about that? Let me know.
Whether they realize, there are definitely politicians out there who are just parroting the talking points.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because they're lazy and they're just trying to go along to get along, and they're just trying to keep their job, and they care more about keeping the job than actually speaking the truth. And it's what we talked about. You don't want to be ostracized in Washington. You don't want to be cast out. They see what happens to people like me and what the Democratic Party did to me, even as I was in Congress and I was running for president on the Democratic ticket. They have done for years all that they could to destroy me. And I had, even when I was in Congress there.
And I ask questions about that because I'll be honest, I don't really get into politics a whole lot. I think about Jesus. I love the scripture. I love where I know truth is actually planted, right? In politics, especially when you're talking with people, you don't know what to trust. You don't know what to believe. And again, I know there's a spiritual kingdom of darkness behind it. So I don't get sidetracked on this left, right, and all these political parties. I'm in the spiritual world. I want to know more about what's going on behind the scenes. And I want to pray and I want to share the gospel. But what she's saying right now in my simple mind is basically like, I was a Democrat, and this could be a Republican saying the same thing, by the way. I mean, that's again, it's not about one or the other. But it's like, I was a Democrat, but I did not toe the party lines. I had my own opinion. I went against the group think. That's what's scary to me, group think, where you're not allowed to think the way you're supposed to, because the men that are really in power, men and women that are truly in power, they're the ones deciding what the group think is, because they've been around the longest, they got the most influence, they got the most connections, maybe money. And then we tell you what to think. And if you don't, we're going to make your life challenging, like they did for Tulsi. She said she ran as a presidential candidate. She was on the Democratic ticket. And they went against, she might have said something that she knew to be true, right? That, hey, we're getting a little bit into delusion now, for example. And now they're treating her badly. They're making life difficult for her. A military veteran, someone that loves his country, loves America, loves the freedoms. And they're just throwing her under the bus because she doesn't toe the party lines. It happens in both parties, guaranteed. I would guarantee it. And you probably know it. You can put examples in the comments if you want to talk about that. But let's not make this about politics, though. Let's not start claiming. I just don't want this to turn into that. Okay. But we are in a quest for truth. And what she's saying is, if you don't follow their truth, we're going to cut you off and, you're done.
Towards the end, I was going to work with a Democrat colleague on a piece of legislation or an issue that we had agreed on for years and we had worked together on previously. And that member's staff told my staff, no, we're not going to work with you guys on this because we don't want our boss to be infected with your boss's toxicity.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. It's a true story. And so they look at people like me, even people who may agree on some of these things that we're talking about, that just, again, it's common sense. It's common sense. They are terrified. So
I want to stop there again. They're terrified. Terrified. Again, it's this fear. Okay? I don't want to turn this into that argument. Those people over there are the enemy, because that's exactly how the real enemy keeps us distracted, divided, and fighting one another. Let's not do that. I'm going to continue to say that. We have to allow our thoughts to transcend this, okay, this way of thinking. We got to be more about the kingdom of heaven and realize the spiritual force of wickedness that we're really battling against. And again, that's why what she said in the beginning about how these people do not want us believing in God. They don't want us to have a transcendent grounding of truth and right and wrong, okay? They don't like that because they can't control people that think that way. But to be terrified, fear, man, that's horrible. People who are, you got to realize, like, Ephesians 6, okay, let me just say this. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, like I said. We wrestle against spiritual rulers, authorities, cosmic powers over the present darkness, spiritual force of evil in the heavenly places. Okay, that doesn't mean that people are not responsible for lying. They are. Politicians are responsible, right? Media figures are responsible. Corporate leaders are responsible. We are all responsible for whether we tell a lie or, tell the truth or repeat a lie, right? But to be terrified, that just bothers me. This reminds me just of censoring, suppression, just fear. What's underneath that system? The kingdom of darkness. Jesus called Satan a liar and the father of lies. Revelation calls him the deceiver of the whole world. He's called the God of this age. Okay, he is the enemy that steals, kills, and destroys. He doesn't want nothing good for us. He doesn't want any truth out there. Satan would only be happy if everything that we believe right now was a lie. Okay, and so we got to realize that. Like if we have a real view of this world and this reality behind the scenes, we would not get caught up in a left versus right world. We would get caught up into a kingdom of heaven and a kingdom of darkness, right? This is between good and evil, literally. Isaiah 5:20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." So we should not be surprised when truth is called hateful and lies are called compassion. We shouldn't be surprised when good is called evil and evil is called good. That's what the enemy does. He flips reality upside down, makes it antichrist. And fear, being terrorized, is one of his favorite weapons, right? People are afraid to be called toxic. They're terrified of losing friends and influence. They're terrified of losing their job. People are terrified of being cast out of circles of power. They want to hold on to what they've built. And when fear rules people, they will repeat things they know are not true. And this is where we call misinformation, and where misinformation needs to come to the conversation, because that's really important, because there really is false information out there. But the question is, do we trust the same power structures that has spread false or incomplete narratives to become the final judge of truth? Check this out. Let me tell me if you remember this. The Disinformation Governance Board.
Topping our news and making headlines around the nation tonight, the Department of Homeland Security is setting up a Disinformation Governance Board in an attempt to tackle the spread of false information in the United States.
Jim, good evening. The goal is to counter disinformation on the internet coming from Russia and misleading messages about the U.S.-Mexico border. Republican lawmakers are pushing back, with Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy comparing it to George Orwell's novel 1984.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, thankfully it got taken down. All right. I'm really glad, because what are we talking about here? It's about countering false information from foreign sources. They say that it's about, actually, I think she says more. I think I left some more in there. Listen to this and recognize the mask wearing. This is during COVID time, which is when they really, really wanted to push this home.
The Department of Homeland Security unveiling a Disinformation Governance Board, a new push with one wide-reaching goal.
To prevent disinformation and misinformation from traveling around the country in a range of communities. I'm not sure who opposes that effort.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki laid out a number of areas.
It's been a busy week.
Biden administration sees misleading information as a problem.
There has been a range of disinfo out there about a range of topics. I mean, including COVID, for example, and also elections and eligibility.
Yeah, I saw it was about foreign sources like Russia. They're always trying to push fear tactics, saying Russia this, Russia that, to make us afraid so that we allow them to do whatever they want. And but this COVID stuff, that was tough. Who would be against that? Who would be against stopping this misinformation? That's not the real issue. The issue is not whether misinformation exists or whether we want to stop it. All right, misinformation does exist. All right, the issue is who gets the power to define that misinformation. Because once the government, the media, or powerful institutions get to decide what is true, the label misinformation, it can be used as a weapon, and it was definitely done. Sometimes what gets called misinformation turns out to be legitimate questions or complicated truth or something officials themselves got wrong. But I want to tell you, think about COVID. Early on, remember, the lab leak theory was often dismissed as misinformation or conspiracy. We weren't allowed to say that. Again, these are things that you would get deplatformed for saying. But later, FBI Director Christopher Wray publicly said the FBI assessed COVID most likely originated from a lab incident in Wuhan. Okay, I want to share with you that clip next. Watch this.
The top official for a U.S. law enforcement agency now saying it has believed for some time the COVID-19 pandemic likely had its origins in a lab leak in Wuhan, China. But the White House Wednesday downplayed that finding from the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
We have seen many.
And by the way, I'm going to let the next two people speak, but realize they're reading. No one thinks for themselves. Everyone's reading something, especially politicians. They're just reading. Like, who wrote that? I want to know the source. Like, who's writing and all these things that people are reading. Just pay attention.
Many different conclusions, right, from the intelligence community. Some of them have made some conclusion on one side. Some of them have made conclusions on the other side. Some of them say they don't have enough information. So want to be also very careful there.
The U.S. State Department also saying there are a variety of views within the U.S. intelligence community on the pandemic's origins.
What we do know is that for more than 2 years now, the PRC has been blocking international investigators and members.
Just reading. I'm going to stop it. But remember, that was a big thing. Or think about the claim that vaccinated people don't carry the virus. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said in March 2021 that the CDC data suggested that vaccinated people don't carry the virus and don't get sick. Man, listen to this. Just bringing stuff back up. It's kind of important on this conversation about who has the truth.
I'm so impressed with our ability to vaccinate at a clip of 3 million vaccinations a day. We have 93 million Americans who have gotten their first dose, 51 million who have gotten their second dose, and we can kind of almost see the end. We're vaccinating so very fast. Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real world data.
Tell you, that bothers me. I remember this like it was yesterday. The CDC updated that guidance because vaccinated people did still infect people. They still did transmit the virus. And by the way, vaccinations did not stop the spread, and masks did not work. They didn't work. But I remember to say that, I was told that I was evil. I was a less than. I didn't know anything. Do you remember this? Were you a part of that? If you did this to others, just repent. I forgive you. I understand there was a lot of craziness going on. There was a time of fear. But goodness gracious, I did not like feeling like this. And I'm hoping that we're learning our lesson. We got to be careful what we believe. Okay, we got to be careful who's telling us what to believe. And we need to make sure that we draw near to Jesus. He is the only one that has the truth. Now, watch this. Remember this about the ivermectin claim?
So the FDA settled a lawsuit over ivermectin social media posts. Let me just go ahead and show you this Newsweek article on this. The FDA agreed to delete and never republish several social media posts suggesting that ivermectin, a drug that some doctors use to treat COVID-19, is for animals and not humans. A lawsuit filed was brought by doctors Mary Talley Bowden, Paul Merrick, and Robert Apter, each of whom claimed.
Remember this? This is where they said that ivermectin, even though it was effective, it was effective. I won't tell you how I know that, but it was extremely effective. It worked for Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan went out there and said it, and then he was getting blasted for that. But he has such a popular following that it really didn't work. It kind of backfired on them. And now here's this thing where the FDA was putting out Facebook posts and things like that, social media posts, mocking people, saying you're not a horse, don't take ivermectin. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So they got sued, and that's what she's talking about.
The FDA was interfering with their ability to practice medicine. And based on what we believe as doctors is in their best interest, you're the FDA. You're not supposed to be meddling inside of our practices and of medicine.
Right.
And you did when you made all these social media posts. And as you see, remember when CNN was saying Joe Rogan was using horse medicine, and FDA came out with all these posts on social media telling people not to use the horse medicine when referring to ivermectin. And so they basically sued and said, for one, ivermectin is not horse medicine. It is used by people and animals. It's an award-winning. It won a Nobel Prize. And so you're interfering with what we believe is what was best for our patients.
I mean, people lost their ability to practice medicine over this stuff. They were literally, like, that's what I'm saying. This is why the freedom of speech, and understand there's powers that want to control that all over the place. It's all for power. It's all for gaining more power and influence so that people like us don't have a voice no more. Eventually, the gospel is going to be considered hate speech. It's going to happen. They might as well write the word there. Dr. Gupa goes into Lions Den to talk with conspiracy theorist Joe Rogan. That's a popular one. Just call him a conspiracy theorist. Put a tinfoil hat on. I mean, they did that with the people of the UFOs. Put tinfoil hats on. People were so embarrassed to talk about what they saw. And now what do we have? We have the release of all these UFO files. Over and over and over again, we're being lied to. It's exactly what I would think would come if there's a liar behind the scenes. Gosh, and this time, public institutions like the FDA were mocking people. They were making things oversimple. They were censoring people, dismissed questions that deserve an honest answer, calling people crazy. Now, there was a broader court battle over the government's pressure on social media companies. I don't know if you knew this or not, but there was a case. It was called Missouri versus Biden, the Fifth Circuit. It said certain federal officials likely coerce or significantly encourage platforms to moderate content in ways that implicated the First Amendment. Now, the Supreme Court later dismissed the case on standing in Murphy versus Missouri, but it did not rule on it. I mean, they didn't say that it violated the First Amendment, but the fact that the case reached that level shows how serious this issue became. They were trying to do that. They were going after, I remember Elon Musk blew that up whenever he took over X, and how Twitter and the government were working to censor people. And speaking of social media, listen to how Hillary Clinton now frames the issue of social media moderation. It's wild.
But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
We lose total control. I mean, you can debate exactly what she meant. She was talking about social media moderation, online harm, and platform responsibility. But that phrase that stands out to me is we lose total control. That is a phrase people hear. Control and we. I mean, who is we? And what are you controlling? Controlling over what we see, over what they hear, control over what they're allowed to question. You talking about controlling the narrative? You lose control over that. Reminds me of John Kerry. Makes it hard to control public opinion. And this is the danger. When people, powerful people, get to define truth, disagreement with them becomes disinformation. When people begin to define morality, biblical conviction, what the Bible says becomes hate. When powerful people define compassion, people who tell the truth become dangerous. That's why Christians we have to be both wise and loving. We cannot be, arrogant and hateful. We cannot become people who believe every rumor just because it fits our side. But we also cannot be naive. We have to be aware. We have to wake up. The Bible tells us to test everything and hold fast to what is good. It tells us to speak the truth in love. It tells us not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. So the answer is not panic. The answer is discernment. It's not hatred. It's the truth in love. And man, it's definitely not worshiping a political party. This is why I'm making this video. Like, we cannot worship a party, either one of them. The answer is allegiance to the King, to Jesus. If you're a Christian, you're called an ambassador for heaven. You're an ambassador for the gospel, for the kingdom of heaven on earth. And Jesus is your king. If Jesus' world is not, if his kingdom is not of this world, then your kingdom where you reside is not from this world. We are in a tent right now. Okay, this is a flesh body, but our true home is in heaven, the spiritual kingdom with our king. But now, I want you to watch how this fear moves from private silence into public policy. Because when people are too afraid to tell the truth, the lie does not stay theoretical. It starts shaping children's schools, sports, family, speech, and even what people are allowed to say out loud. Let's go back to Tulsi Gabbard.
Not a single Democrat in the House or Senate has stood up for the well-being of kids in this issue of gender-affirming care. Not a single one, again, that I've seen and I've looked, not a single one has stood up against President Biden's mandate that has destroyed Title IX, which creates a fair and level playing field for girls and women's in education and sports. He destroyed that by inserting gender identity, which then opens the door wide open for any man to go in, as we've seen with Leah Thomas and these other examples, to go in and compete, a biological male to compete in biological women's sports. Not a single one of them has stood up for women and girls. This is coming from people who claim to be feminists and we support women and all this other crap. They are terrified because they see what happens to people like me, and they care more about what their friends think of them and what those little circles of backslapping that take place in Washington, D.C., than they do about truth and common sense and actually caring for our kids and caring for our young women and girls and caring for the people in our country. And that's, so yes, it's people who believe that they are, they know what's best for our country more than we do. So they try to take away our ability to make choices for ourselves because they don't want us to make wrong choices. They try to control what information we see and don't see because they know what's best for us, that they need to curate that so that we're protected from violent speech or hate speech or misinformation or disinformation, all of these things that they label to try to silence certain people's voices or certain narratives. Ultimately, what does it come down to? It comes down to power. They care more about power, and whether it is those who know exactly what they are doing and the ends justify the means because they believe they alone know what is best for us.
Power, influence, control. That's exactly where we want to land because it's the truth. It's not about well-being. It's not about they care for you. I've always asked the question, how in the world can we trust somebody that we don't know like that? When you're talking about that level of politics, I don't care what side, like I said, I don't care what side of politics you're on. You got people that cheat on their wives, cheat on their husbands, have these wild parties, I'll just put it that way, where Lord knows what's going on. There's no real loyalty. It's all about who I can influence to get what I want. It's selfishness. How can we trust people like that don't even know me, don't even know you? It's just the hardest thing. I want to trust them. And I'm sure there's really good ones out there. But again, this is why I do not put my trust in this thing. I just don't. I can't. I've never been that way. So this is where I want to land. The answer to this kingdom of lies is not simply a better political party. It's just not. Again, the truth does matter in politics, and Christians should care about policy. Yes, evil should be confronted. I agree to all these things, but the ultimate answer is not left and right. The answer is light versus darkness. It's truth versus deception. It's Christ versus the kingdoms of this world and the kingdoms of darkness. Colossians 1 says, God has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son. That means if you are in Christ, you do not belong to the spirit of this age any longer. You don't have to be discipled by this propaganda. You don't got to be ruled by fear. You don't have to repeat the lie to the crowd to keep your place in this world. Okay, Jesus told Pilate, again, my kingdom is not of this world. And he also said, for this purpose I was born, and this purpose I have come into the world. Get this, to bear witness to the truth. That's why they don't like Jesus. That's why you can say any name but his. That's why, again, the J-bomb, I call it a J-bomb, because they want to censor that name, because his name is associated with truth, because he is the truth. So Christians cannot be indifferent to lies. We cannot call evil good and good evil. We cannot pretend that truth doesn't matter, but we also cannot become bitter. We shouldn't be hateful and paranoid. I think this helps. This helps me. I mean, I understand that we're all being lied to. I understand there's real propaganda, even right here in the U.S., right? We can't be thinking that it doesn't go on here. There's a psyop going on all the time. People that are calculating and doing this as a full-time job, many powerful people. So we cannot look at a person and get mad at them for what they believe. I like how people say lost people don't know they're lost. People that don't know they're lost are not going to look for a map to get home to the truth. Okay? We have to be about the mission of the gospel. The enemy wants us divided. He wants us angry and suspicious. He wants us distracted. He wants us pointing fingers at each other while he keeps deceiving the whole world. But Jesus calls us into truth, into love and courage and repentance and real life. So the question is not just, do you see the deception out there? The deeper question is, have you surrendered to the truth? Have you given your life to Jesus? Are you getting caught up in the world and all these different deceptions? Or are you reading the scripture? Are you following Christ, who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life? He is not just exposing lies, my friend. He is the way out of them. So give your heart to Christ. Thank you for being here, my friend. Give your heart to Jesus. I'm just so thankful for this time to be here with you, to talk about these things. So these deep dives have been fun. It's something I'm not trying to do too often, but I really do enjoy them. I like kind of going a little bit deeper, giving you some more context. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's keep focused on Jesus. Let's put on love. Let's wear his love upon us and be a witness to the world for this love of Christ. Hit that like button. Let's push this out there as far as we can. Let's get the truth out there. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Truth Be Told. I'd love to have you with me on this truth journey. My name is Jeremiah James. It's a blessing to be with you. Truth be told.